DiscoveringLean.net. Today we're going to solve a common problem. How do I cook a lasagna, get the flavor of the lasagna, but make it healthier, more diet compliant? I used to make, when I was a bigger guy, a lasagna that I used to joke would solve the common problem of lasagna. Didn't have enough calories, didn't have enough cheese, so I put 5 cheeses in it, 5 meats in it. It was very tasty, but horrible for you, heart attack on a plate. So what we're going to do today, my wife requested that I come up with some ideas so that we could have the flavors of lasagna, but make it in compliance with our diet. So here's what we're going to whip up. I'll show you the ingredients. We're going to have a red bell pepper. I prefer red, you can use green. I prefer red because it's going to blend more with the colors of the food. A medium yellow onion. I'm using zucchini. I've peeled these just with a regular peeler. And I'm going to cut them on the mandolin slicer, which we'll show you in a minute. I have fresh basil out of the garden, a couple of cloves of garlic, low-fat 2% cottage cheese, a part skimmed, the lowest fat version of ricotta I could find, mozzarella. It's also low-fat. I checked this 2% milk. I just did some smart chopping to get the best I could come up with as far as calories. This is 96% lean ground beef. I also often use my bison. I love bison. I was at a market today that just didn't have it, so I had to make another choice. Again, just through smart shopping, I got the Emerald's kicked up tomato. This has 11 grams of carbs in a serving, which I saw versions that were 2 or 3 times that amount of carbs. So just shopped through the aisle, found one that was as low as possible, that was a name that I recognized, went with that. Now, as far as the squash, we're using a zucchini squash. If you can find it, you can use an Italian squash, the cucuzza, or guguts, some people will say. Had it back home in New Orleans, was readily available down there. So far impossible to find in Arkansas, but you could substitute other kind of squashes. You can also use an eggplant. I would recommend, if you want with the eggplant, to go with a smaller eggplant so that you don't have the same number of seeds, the heavy seed pods in the center of it. Or if you only find large, just carve the seeds out, because you really don't want that. That'd be a bad texture for what we're trying to do. So first step, we're going to combine our cheeses and non-meat ingredients, and then we'll have another bowl where we're combining just our meat ingredients. So I'll be back in just a moment. Okay, so I spent a couple of minutes. We sliced up several of our noodles. Have those ready. Take our basil. Just pick right out of the garden. Smells fantastic. When you're cutting, curl your fingers back. You don't want fingers out with a knife, that's baddish. And this is a matter of taste. I'll put how much I put in the recipe. If you are just insane about basil and you love it, add more. If you can't stand it, add less. It doesn't matter what I like as far as the taste of my food. You have to go with it. Again, I've said this in another video. Some cooking places will say that to take the knife, put the knife on top and smash it. If you're new to cooking, there's an edge on most knives. So I just like to smash it with my hand. The main thing is it just loosens the skin, so that wasn't hard. If your hands are more sensitive, then take any dull object, your husband, etc., and use that. Sorry, husbands. And I'm going for about a good tablespoon, fairly decent dice. So it'll be a little more than a tablespoon. We'll measure that. 2 cloves. How about that? Medium cloves. I'd say that is about a tablespoon. There you go. And I'm going to use a good full tablespoon of our fresh basil. And we're going to combine this together. That's our non-meat, our cheese mix. We're going to extend the meat a little bit by using the bell pepper. So I cut it off a little close to the top for a couple of reasons. One, I have a nice ring, then I have a stem. When I pull out the core piece, I barely have any waste at all. I cut this in half. All right, so we're going to cut our bell pepper. Just chop from the open end, knife end on the closed end, if you will. And then we're going to cut into small chunks. We're going to add that to our meat bowl, because again, this is going to be mixed in with our meat. We're going to do the same for the other half of the bell pepper. For the onion, we're going to cut off the top end, and then we're going to lay it on the table using the flat. We're going to lay it on the table right in the middle of the root end. So what that's going to allow us to do, we can use, if you're cooking for yourself, use your fingernail to do it. If you're cooking for others, it's generally frowned upon to have your fingernails in somebody else's food. So we're going to grab it with the knife. Peel it that way. Now we're going for a fairly small, but not tiny chop. So I'm going to go this way on the onion, and then I'm going to cut about 80% into the root. I'm going to cut about 1/4 inch strips, and then do the same 1/4 inch strips. There's your dice. I cut into the top also, again, not to waste it. So just stay in there. Take that in, meat mix. If you prefer, you can use beef, you can use bison. If you don't like red meat or you're trying to avoid it, you can certainly use ground chicken or ground turkey. It'll work fine. The main thing is we want as lean of a cut of meat as we can. So, run it up a little bit here. I've got a pot already on the stove. Or a pan, I should say. And we're gonna mix this in. So we're gonna let this brown, we're gonna let the meat brown. We're gonna basically sweat our vegetables on the stove. Because we really wanna, we wanna sweat them for consistency of flavor. We also don't want an obvious crunch of a piece of onion or a piece of bell pepper in our final product. While we're at it, I'm gonna set the oven on 350. So, be back in a minute. All right, so we're gonna start throwing in some of our cheese ingredients. So I'm gonna measure everything so we can do this in a reliable way. I have 7 servings, 1/4 cup each, of this 2% skim, so we're gonna use that. We're making a fairly big pan. Now, normally I put a lot of ricotta, but I don't put that much cottage cheese, but cottage cheese is about half the calorie density. These particular ones I'm picking apart, skim versus the 2% cottage. So I'm doing a cup of that. This is a 1/3 cup measuring spoon. And I do still want to include the ricotta because it's flavor. MacGyver, if you cried. I'm going to put a little more. I'm going to put about 1/2 cup of that in. When it comes to our mandolin slicer, what I want to do instead of cutting slices this way, we're cutting long ways, and the only reason I peeled them, the skin's fine. If you want to include the skin, no big deal. But as far as the appearance, if you're cooking for kids, if it's green, I'll go, that's not a noodle. Because what we're going to do, we're going to thin slice this. You can see that's one of my noodles. I have it set on thin. This is not the perfect mandolin. It's just a cheap one I got at Walmart, to be honest with you. I'm in Walmart country, so we go to the Walmarts. chopping, and I'll be back in just a moment. All right, so we're cooking a little more. I'm gonna add a little spice recipe that I've worked on. I call it Magic Mike's. We're gonna add about a tablespoon of that, just to add a little flavor. It's on a fine sieve, that's why I was shaking a lot, but you can see it cooking down. Before I add it, beef has, even this 96% beef, a fair amount of this is water, but it'll still have a fair amount of fat compared to bison. So we're gonna make sure we drain that off when we're finished cooking, but while it's cooking, that's fine. But we're in progress, we're about halfway done. This has been cooking for about 2 minutes. So, be right back. All right, so this is what we're looking for. Got a little brown to the meat. We're sweating the veggies together a little. And we're gonna use a slotted spoon just because we don't want any extra fat. Anything we can leave out, great. We're gonna get that into our clean bowl. And then I'll meet you at the cutting block and we're gonna start assembling. All right, so we've got our cheeses ready, we got our meat sauce ready. We're gonna add our jar. I'm only using half of this. That's about all I need. I have another spoon to mix that together. And keep in mind that this is, just because you're eating something, it doesn't mean you have to go hog wild. You know, portion control is still big. And I'm trying to, it might not seem like a lot of calories I save by eliminating the other half of the sauce, but every bit counts. And we also don't have to have a massive portion. You can have a reasonable portion size and then fill the rest of the plate with veggies and you're fine. So substituting a little bit of extra meat for some of the bell pepper and onion, leaving out some of the sauce, etc. Just making smarter choices. And then we'll take our cheese mix, a little light coat of that. This should give us a lot of the flavors, but reducing a lot of the calorie count. And we'll have a full calorie count per serving, suggested serving size, as well as a gross count for everything on the plate. And in case my grandmother is watching, I apologize. The intent here is to, this is the layer of noodles, in air quotes. But I, of course, would be using homemade sauce most of the time. But A, not everybody has their beautiful Italian grandmother's recipe, and B, a lot of people are just simply in a hurry. So I'm trying to, be on the good, better, best scale. This is a better option than all of the carbs we're saving from the traditional version. Now I'm going to take 1/3 of a cup of our sauce. We're going to put just a drizzle on top. And time to go in the oven. So we're going to put this in the oven at 350 for about 30 minutes. I'm just going to look for the color of it. It's going to be 30-45 minutes. Again, just looking for color. It'll be done fairly quick because the only thing really not cooked, other than the cheeses, is the zucchini, so we just need to have that flesh cooked a little bit. So, be back in a moment. Alright, welcome back. Here's our finished product. We've got our lasagna ready to go. I calculated the calories. It's about 1,400 change, almost 1,500 calories for the entire pan. Per serving, this is the size I have here would be 8 servings per pan. This would be less than 200 calories. And still full of flavor. My recommendation is to not just have a massive pile of lasagna, reasonable portion size, still a good sized portion on the plate, but fill the plate up with vegetables, salad, etc. You're satisfied, you've got the flavors, you've got the taste, you've got all the positives and none of the negatives. So thanks for tuning in. Watch us for more recipes coming up, and tune in to discoveringlean.net. Thanks.